All right, well, welcome. Welcome to the City of Laguna Niguel's Veteran Day celebration. I'm your mayor, Ray Genoway, and I'm honored to join you this morning to recognize, remember, and celebrate all of our brave veterans. We will begin our ceremony today with a formal presentation of the flags led by local Boy Scout Troop 772. Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing. I didn't read the full script. The arrival of the flags will immediately be followed by Mayor Pro Tem Gene Johns leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And finally, we will welcome Miriam Steffen, who will perform our national anthem. At this time, I ask that you please stand, if you are able, and remain standing as we honor our flag of this great country. Boy Scout Troop 772.
Please remain standing. Raise your right hand on your heart. Veterans may salute. To show our gratitude and our continued promise to patriotism, please join me as we pay our respects by pledging allegiance to our nation's flag. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Please stay standing. Please stay standing. I should read it too.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight all the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Let's hear it for Boy Scout Troop 772. And wasn't that an amazing rendition of our national anthem by Miriam Steffen? Not only is she our singer today for this event, she's a recreation leader here at the City of Laguna Niguel. She's also a resident of Laguna Niguel, so thank you so much, Miriam. I would like for us to share in a moment of silence to show our respect to those that gave the ultimate sacrifice during their service to this great country. To lead us in this moment of silence, I would like to invite Shep Bentley to the stage. After our moment of silence, we will receive today's invocation from First Lieutenant Scott Williams.
Please help me to commemorate the ultimate call to duty by those who offered everything in defense of our freedom and way of life here today, bowing your heads, for whom the bell tolls. Thank you. At ease.
Now the invocation provided by First Lieutenant Scott Williams.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I must admit, I had, when Lynn had contacted me to do invocation, I was recovering from a bicycle fall, and I had not had an opportunity to get back with her. So I would like to make a brief invocation. And want to thank the Almighty Lord for our health and our safety, and to protect our veterans and those who are actively serving. We trust in the Lord to get us through our wars, and thank all those who serve. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that wonderful invocation. I would now like to acknowledge some of the elected officials who are joining us here today, along with a special group of people who work tirelessly to serve our community. Please have a seat. It's the longest standing ovation I've ever had. When I state your name, please stand so that we can recognize you after I told you to sit. Mayor Pro Tem Gene Johns. Councilmember Kelly Jennings. Councilmember Stephanie Otto. Councilmember Stephanie Winstead. We also have our city manager, Tammy Letourneau. Assistant City Manager, Justin Martin. Chief of Police Services, Isaac Flores. Orange County Fire Authority Battalion Chief, Matt Levesque. And additionally, joining us in a few minutes will be Assemblywoman Lori Davies. I would also like to ask all the members of the Laguna Niguel Military Support Committee and the American Legion Post and the American Legion Auxiliary, please rise to be acknowledged. Of course, here in Laguna Niguel, we are extremely thankful to all of our hometown veterans. And I'm so happy that we have so many joining us in person for today's ceremony. Councilmember Stephanie Winstead, who also serves as a co-liaison on the Laguna Niguel Military Support Committee, will be recognizing each veteran in attendance for today's ceremony just a little bit later in the program. As your mayor, it's an honor to be here to pay tribute to our veterans and their families. I'm truly humbled by this opportunity and for you giving me your time here today. A veteran is a true American hero that who has selflessly placed their life on the line for our freedoms, and that is something we can never fully repay them for. Veterans Day is a distinctively special day, a day that honors all United States military service members, both past and present. And while we sit here today, it is important to remember that there are countless members of our armed forces that continue to be stationed around the world, all in an effort to protect this great country and our way of life. It is for them and so many others that we came here today together as a community to say thank you for their service and their sacrifice. At this time, I'd like to welcome Councilmember Kelly Jennings to share the important history of Veterans Day with all of us. After all, we can't truly honor our veterans without first knowing about the history of Veterans Day. Councilmember Kelly Jennings.
Thank you, Mayor. Here in Laguna Niguel, we observe Veterans Day as a tribute to our family, friends, and neighbors who made the honorable decision to defend this great nation and its way of life by serving in the armed forces of the United States of America. The United States In the United States, Veterans Day is observed on November 11th each year. The significance of this date is meant to honor the 11th day of the 11th month on night of 1918, which signaled the end of World War I on November 11th, 1918. This date was originally known as Armistice Day. However, in 1954, after World War II and the Korean War ended, President Eisenhower officially changed the name of the holiday from Armistice Day to what it is today, Veterans Day. Then, 14 years later, in 1968, Congress passed the Uniform Holiday Bill, which temporarily moved Veterans Day to the fourth Monday in October. The law went into effect in 1971, but in 1975, President Gerald Ford signed a new law, returning the annual observance of Veterans Day to its original date of November 11th, due to its meaningful historic significance. The restoration of the observance of Veterans Day to November 11th not only preserves the historical significance of the date, but it also helped to focus attention on the important purpose of the day, which is to celebrate and honor our brave veterans for their love of country, patriotism, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. November 11th commemorates all who have served and are currently serving in the United States Armed Forces. Now, I'd like to welcome my council colleague and co-liaison to the Laguna Niguel Military Support Committee, Councilmember Stephanie Otto, to the podium to share a little bit about our special guest speaker.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Jennings, and thank you all for being here today. It's my honor as the daughter of an Army veteran to be here with you today to honor our nation's veterans. We gather today to recognize the sacrifices made by brave men and women of the armed forces. We make sure their sacrifice is always remembered, because without the sacrifice of their service, our freedoms would not be vigorously protected. Here in Laguna Niguel, it is our long-standing tradition to commemorate Veterans Day by sharing veterans' stories, and today is no different. It is my honor to introduce and welcome today's distinguished guest speaker, Judge Richard M. King. We are fortunate to have him with us to share his memories of serving in the United States Naval Forces, including 2 tours in Vietnam. Judge King is highly regarded for his expertise in criminal law. He is a state leader in judicial education, a former law professor, and was appointed to the Orange County Superior Court by Governor Gray Davis in 2000, where he serves today. We are truly grateful to have him here to share his story, so please join me in welcoming back Judge Richard M. King as he presents Vietnam, A Journey Back, Part 2.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Can everybody hear me all right? Okay. I paid particular note to the speakers before me about the history of Veterans Day. And I want to share with you what happened yesterday as I was leaving the courthouse. I heard someone say, wow, why can't they just have Veterans Day on a Monday or a Friday so we can get a 3-day weekend? And of course, I didn't say anything. As what was pointed out, the 11th month of the 11th day of the 11th hour ended a horrific conflict called World War I. Millions died. And as what has been brought out, we need to preserve that treasure, that history, by making sure that we honor Veterans Day on November 11th. But I started thinking about what that individual said, and there was no malice in that person's mind. I mean, I hear the same thing about Memorial Day. Like, what kind of a barbecue are we going to have on Memorial Day? And so you get a feeling as a veteran that somehow maybe the meaning just starts dissipating because it's a 3-day weekend or it's an extra day off. And I just want to share with you, after that, I heard that comment about how the demographics of veteran population has changed so significantly. In the Civil War, which lasted 4 years, 3 million served. Our population for our country at that time was 31 million. 600,000 died. 200,000, or about 220,000, were actually killed in combat. And many more died of diseases because they couldn't treat the wounds during the battles. World War I was another incredible conflict. We had 2.8 million who served. This is all great for AI stuff, I got to tell you. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to pull this, and I did verify it, so I want to share that, okay? So we had 2.8 million who served, 106 who died. There were 53,000 who were killed in action, and this was a war for our involvement that was 1 year. Yet, the rest, almost 55,000, died of a pandemic during World War I. You know, the pandemic that we faced, 3 or 4 years ago. World War II, this is my parents' generation. 16 million served. Our population in World War I was about 103 million. Our population in World War II had gone to about 140 million. And we had 400,000 who were killed in action, and about 850,000 that were wounded in action. And I grew up in the 50s. My father was a World War II veteran. My grandfather was a World War I veteran. When I grew up, all of the neighbors in the various places I lived, they were all veterans. All of my teachers, male teachers, they were all veterans. Then we go to Korea, sometimes called the Forgotten War. And when Korea conflict occurred, there was 151 million in our country, 1.8 million served, 40,000 were killed in action, and over 100,000 were wounded in action. Things started to change, and that is with the Vietnam War. In the Civil War, World War I, World War II, there was a draft. There was no student deferment. We started to have a student deferment during the Vietnam War. And during the Vietnam War, there was about 27 to 28 million who were eligible for the draft, but about 2.7 million actually served in Vietnam. And there were over 58,000 that were killed in action, and 153,000 that were wounded in action. And our population during the Vietnam War was slightly over 200 million. Then we go into the wars, the Gulf Wars, the wars, since 1990. And there's about, our country went to about 300 million. And there was about 3 million who served during that time. But the casualties were significantly less. What's all this mean? No, I'm not advocating that we need another war, okay? We don't. I'm not advocating that we should have a draft, no. But what these numbers tell you is that it's becoming less and less the adult population who become veterans. And it becomes less and less of families who are impacted by military service. Abraham Lincoln, about 6 weeks before and I mentioned this in the presentation that I gave last year, about 6 weeks before he was assassinated, knew of those casualties in the Civil War. And in his second inaugural address, which is in our monument honoring him, as you look at him on the right side, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan. It should say now, to care for those who shall have borne the battle. But he instilled a commitment to our country that when veterans come home, we need to take care of them because of the horrific experiences they have seen. In World War II, my mother was 15 years old when Pearl Harbor occurred. And when she turned 16 in June of 1942, and her mom ran the house, basically told her to quit high school to go into the war effort. And that's what young women did in World War II. And my mom was an example of that. And all these veterans, 16 million of them came back. And so, as I said before, how we were all affected by that. And that impact is becoming less and less. So I really honor the city of Laguna Niguel for having a program like this. It's important to keep alive the fact that when you're 18 years old, which most people are when they go in the service, they take an oath to defend the Constitution. It's the same oath that a judge takes to defend the Constitution. It's the same oath that a lawyer takes to defend the Constitution. A little bit difference, and I say that sarcastically, because when they take that oath, they're called upon to sacrifice their life to defend the Constitution. And for those who come back, especially those that have witnessed a comrade die and had to deal with that, we need to recognize their service. So again, I want to thank the city for this, and I want to thank for having me come back. So that gets to the program. Now, I do want to tell you, last year, I think it was about an hour. I really had planned it for an hour. There was always this gauge that I had, and it was the clock in the back. I just want to tell you, the clock is stuck back there. All right? So I'll try to keep it. I'll try to keep it going. And let's go to Return, Vietnam, A Journey Back. And let's go back. Now, I just to recap, and I've said this to people, this is a little bit perhaps now that you're watching a series on streaming and they do a recap, okay? So we're going to do a little recap and then get to the return to Vietnam, all right? I want to first just to tell you I was young. I was 18 when I went in the service. I was 20 years old when I was sent to Vietnam. I was a member of the Naval Construction Forces. I operated bulldozers in a combat zone, all right? We came under attack. I was over there during the Tet Offensive of 1968 in a small village south of Hue called Phu Loc. It was, we were attacked. We did not go out on patrols. The Marines did that. But we were building and widening the main convoy route that went from Da Nang up to the DMZ. And there was 180 of us. But the first 3 months, we were very safe. We were in Da Nang, And then they told 180 of us to go up. And this was right during and after the Tet Offensive. And that's when we experienced the casualties. But as I go through this program, I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Forrest Gump. I'm no Forrest Gump, okay? But in 1968 was quite a year for our country. And I'm going to relay some historical events to put in context where I was. And there will be 3 such events, so I just want to give you a little update on that, all right? And the first one is in Da Nang. And again, the journey has to do with 24 individuals who gave their lives on March 31st, 1968, and it has to do with us coming back, all right? That's really what the story was. Last year was pretty much over on the left side, and today is going to be what's over on the right side. So the first thing that I want to talk to you, and I showed this last year because this is an American treasure. This is Bob Hope. I was there. I got there at 4 o'clock in the morning. There were 12,000 Marines and myself. I had my little camera, and I didn't think back then that I would have to prove to you that I was there, okay? But in preparation for my presentation, I found the actual, on the internet, the film of Bob Hope being at the Christmas show in Da Nang in 1968, and I have spliced it with a photograph that I took because I wanted to, I don't know, maybe it's because I tried cases and what have you. We have this thing called corroboration. You know, were you really there? And so I have the photograph, and so when you take a look at the photograph that I took, take a look at Bob Hope's clothing, and then look at when he comes out. That's the funny thing. The serious thing that I want you to look at is how young the Marines were and the Seabees were during that presentation. So let's just take a moment and watch this. This was his Christmas show that he aired. I think they typically came around January, February of 1968.
Such a wonderful location. It's so handy to downtown Hanoi. And I want to tell you folks, these Marines are really tough. I asked one guy if he'd seen... Yeah, you're tougher than I thought. They're really tough. I asked one guy if he'd seen John Wayne, and he said, John Wayne, who's she?
All right, so that's the first historical part that I wanted to share with you. Let's go on to the battle, and I just want to recap the battle. We set up a camp. This was, again, about 20 miles south of the city of Hue. During that time, it was probably the deadliest battle that was going on during the Tet Offensive. And we were, our mission was to widen and to expand the convoy route. So when you do that, you have to have road rock. And when you have road rock, you blast a quarry and you get the big rocks and you put them in a crusher, and the crusher makes them into smaller rocks, and that's the road rock. Okay, so basically that's the mission. And when we got there, it was just total vegetation, and we set up our perimeter. And our perimeter had to do with barbed wire on the outside. It had to do with barbed wire, again, on the inside. We had regular bunkers, and they were placed throughout the camp. And then we also had what is called mortar teams. And I just want to take a moment to tell you what a mortar team is. It's about 6 people, 6 soldiers, 6 CVs. They line up in a line. The mortar team leader is right over at this area here and does a click. And the round goes down, and it's gravity that actually propels the mortar out. It's not like a gun. It's not trigger pressure. It's gravity. And then as soon as that is fired, there's a small click. And the 6 people that are in it, or the other 5, are relaying the mortar rounds to be placed in. And so when the mortar rounds land, they don't land in the same spot. They walk in. They walk in. And the enemy had those as well, as we'll see in a moment. We also had good old-fashioned foxholes. You dug a hole when you came under attack, and that's where you went on the outside of the perimeter. That's where you went, and it's just like in the movies. You know, these were foxholes. On the evening of March 30th of 1968, we had 2 Marine tanks come into our camp. They were called howitzers. They had an 8-inch gun. That's the diameter. They propelled a 200-pound projectile up to 20 miles with pinpoint accuracy. Now, you have to understand at this time, there's no satellites that are relaying things. There's no texting. There's no emails. It's all by grids that are called in by the unit that is asking for the support of the tanks. In the eyes of the enemy, this was a very lethal weapon, because when that round landed, it had a kill radius of about 5 to 10 yards and dug a hole, and anything that was there was, you were killed. So in the eyes of the enemy, this was a very lethal weapon. Down the river, about 4 miles away, was a detachment of Marines at a bridge. And it was being manned by a couple of platoons. And again, these were all Marines, a lot of them just out of boot camp because of the heavy casualties that were going on up in Hue. They needed people, young Marines, to provide the security details for the bridges on Highway 1. That's what the road was that it was called. We had an evening attack, and it was a coordinated effort by about 200 to 300 North Vietnamese Army and Viet Cong. They surrounded the camp. They attacked the camp with mortars, rockets, satchel charges, and there was reports that they were actually inside the wire. And what they did, they called in for those 2 8-inch Marine tanks 4 miles away to render support to suppress the attack on that bridge. And there were heavy casualties by the Marines. So the enemy decided to attack again. Only this time they went into the hills above our camp. And they went into the hills above our camp, and their mission was to take out the 8-inch guns so that they would not be able to give support to the Marines that are down on the bridge. And it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and I just never forget it. I'll never forget it for as long as I live. My good buddy Herbie Schilling, and he was from Clare, Michigan, screams at me because I'm sleeping, and we're under attack. And during this attack, several Seabees were wounded. The mortar teams, and they were on duty 24/7 the whole day. All right? They're on duty. They returned fire, and when they returned fire, they suppressed the attack of the enemy mortar and rocket teams that were up on the hills. All right? So, when I got out of my hooch, and we called it a hooch, the hut, and ran to my foxhole, ironically, was right next to a Marine 8-inch tank that the enemy was trying to wipe out. And it seemed like an eternity for me. Rounds are coming in, and I'm in an open space. And I just was waiting. And fortunately, none of them hit me. When that attack was over, we have a battle aid station, and our platoon commander, platoon sergeant, came over and said, we need volunteers in the battle aid station. And I want to tell you right now, I couldn't get my hand up fast enough. I wanted to get as far away from those 8-inch tanks as I possibly could. And so I went in and I helped the corpsmen. I did orderly duties. There was an individual who was mortally wounded. He died later, and I was pretty much assigned to him to take care of him. And I was told that if there's another attack, you're going to be a litter bearer. And what a litter bearer is, that you go to the site where the casualty is and you bring them back. And so those were my duties. We were waiting for a medevac helicopter to come, and it was about 8 o'clock in the morning. And that helicopter crashed. And to this day, it's unclear whether it was because of the weather, was it because it got shot down, but in any event, 2 young Marines were killed. And while we were out there waiting for the helicopter, we came under attack again. This was at about 8 o'clock in the morning. And I was at a position over here by where the battle aid station was. And I was with some others, and we were shooting up in the hills. I mean, we were just shooting up there because that's where people were shooting. I mean, that's what really war is, okay? And we saw the following. And remember about the mortars that I told you that walk in? Well, the mortar rounds started to come in from the enemy, and they started to walk in. And as they're walking in, they're walking towards one of the mortar teams that the Seabees were manning. And this is something that will carry me forever. Everybody knew that they knew that those rounds were coming in. And if they'd have jumped out of that pit, nobody would have criticized them, but they didn't. Because you see, it was their job to defend our camp. And they kept on returning fire, and ultimately they took 2 direct hits. And we got over there. There was a person seriously wounded, got him back, and then me and one other person went, and we put the remains of the other 5 into body bags. So when the battle was over, the bridge was still under control of the Marines. And that was because of the 8-inch tanks that were providing support, as well as the CB mortar teams there at our camp, which was called Detail Echo. But here was the price. 68 were wounded. 58 Marines at the bridge, 2 Marines at the medevac helicopter, 8 Seabees at our camp. 24 young men on that morning gave their lives. Remember the oath they took to defend the Constitution? Well, they paid the ultimate sacrifice. There were 15 Marines and a medical corpsman, 2 Marines in the medevac helicopter, and 6 Seabees at our camp. And when I asked you about maybe 10 minutes ago or 15 minutes ago, again, I can't see the clock, so I got an out here, all right? To look at that Bob Hope show and how young everybody was. I'm going to show you the photographs of those who died while they were alive, and take a look at how young they are. Here are the Marines. Here are the Marines from the medevac. And here are the Seabees. Jim Retzlaff on the lower right hand, I was a good friend. He was an incredible athlete. He was an assistant golf pro. And he always talked to me about coming back to California and, you know, you ought to stay out here and don't go back to the Midwest. And we played on the team, or the battalion softball team together. And we got to know each other in combat. The other one is the bottom one, was John Peak. He was from Pontiac, Michigan. He was older than the rest of us because, you see, he went in the service, and because of economics, when he got out, he had to go back in, and he had a family. And for whatever reason, he saw something in me, and he kept on telling me, don't do what I do. When you get out, go back to college. And as you can see, I took him up on that. Now, that's them. We had a memorial. I'm in that picture somewhere. I remember going there. I just don't know where I was there. But we honored their death and their sacrifice, and we did a memorial. And this picture becomes very important 50 years later, and hopefully you'll hang around and you'll see why. Okay? But remember, I told you about the historical content of what's going on. Unknowns to most of us that were in Vietnam, we read the Stars and Stripes. But the Vietnam War, starting at around 1968, became somewhat controversial to many people in the country. People started questioning, why are we there? People started questioning our commitment to be there. In the summer of 1968, before this, Robert Kennedy decided he was going to run against a sitting president, and his platform was to end the war in Vietnam. You had other presidential candidates, and about 7 hours after the battle that those young men died and gave their lives, Lyndon Johnson, our president, went on national television and made the following announcement.
With our hopes and the world's hopes for peace and the balance every day, I do not believe that I should devote an hour or a day of my time to any personal partisan causes or to any duties other than the awesome duties of this office, the presidency of your country. Accordingly, I shall not seek and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
So we were in Vietnam on that first tour for another couple of months. During that time, we came under attack. Fortunately, we didn't suffer any fatal casualties. But on May 31st, we left Vietnam as a unit. And I have a picture here of a C-141. It's like a dark, hardly any windows, transport plane that you go in and you sit on jump seats. That's how we came to Vietnam. Well, when we left, things were somewhat different, and we went in a commercial to go back. And we flew from our camp or we convoyed from our camp in Phu Loc to an airport in Phu Bai, which was about 10 miles up the road, and we caught a propeller, a C-130, down to Da Nang. And we're there at the airport, and we're looking around. We're looking for the C-141. And then that same platoon sergeant says, "You're going home in that." And we go, "What?" And so I was with my good buddy Herbie, and they said, "Put your sea bags and drop your sea bags right there at the nose and go around and then go up the stairs." And Herbie was in front of me, and he puts his sea bag down, and I put my sea bag down, and all of a sudden Herbie yells, "What the," and I won't repeat. And we both look up, and there were two stewardesses. And to this day, I'll never forget going up, and this stewardess said, "CB, you're going home." And I can't tell you how that made me feel. So we got on the plane, and we were supposed to land in Point Mugu. That's where we took off from. But because of the fog, we got diverted to Los Angeles International Airport. It was the Saturday of the California primary in 1968. The primary was conducted on Tuesday. We fly in on Saturday, and Robert Kennedy, who was running for president in California, was taking, that was his main transportation center, and he was taking flights from LA to Bakersfield. He'd come back, take another flight down to San Diego. He'd come back, take another one up to Sacramento, and come back. So his supporters were in the airport, and we still have our fatigues on. And we walked through that airport. And it's just hard for me to demonstrate to you what the reaction was. I want to say nobody spit on me. Nobody asked me how many people did I put on my band. And it was none of that. But there was a sense that we were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And the best way to describe it to you, and it's hard for me to watch this, but I'm going to watch it with you. This is a Budweiser commercial. Came on during the Super Bowl about, I don't know, was it now 14, 15 years ago? And when you watch this, just in your mind, think of what it was 180 degrees from this. Well, that was my first mistake. I came back. I'm going to get a little bit about going back to Vietnam, but I never wore my uniform in public after that. I started college. It was in the middle of the anti-war protest. I hung out with Vietnam vets, and fewer completed college with me for a lot of reasons. And I just never really shared my experiences until it was about 1989. I went on a skiing trip with a bunch of DAs, and we were at a bar. And somebody asked me about my service, and that was the first time somebody ever thanked me for my service. It was about 20 years later. So, the next day is Sunday, and I'm going back to see my mom on the Monday. I have a plane ticket, but Sunday I was like open, and I called someone who I had met before and had written me in Vietnam. And I just want to say, mail call in Vietnam, this is before texting, this is before email. It's huge. It was better than having a meal. I mean, you're getting letters. So I called her up, and she answered the phone. And I told her, I said, well, I'm hanging out. Oh, I'll hang out with you. Where you want to go? And I said, I want to go to Disneyland. And I went to Disneyland with her, and I got on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. I must have just gone around and around like 10 times. I just wanted to be mindless, okay? And then later on in the day, we go on the Pirates of the Caribbean. And somebody yells out, "Here he comes." A colleague of mine who is now retired, Jim Rogan, he was a former congressman from the Burbank area. He's written a lot of books, political books. He wrote a book called On to Chicago, and it's about Robert Kennedy's presidential journey. And I didn't know he was writing this as we were colleagues, and I didn't know he was writing it, and he did not know about my service in Vietnam. And when I read his book, there was a chapter about the Sunday, and there was a paragraph about how Robert Kennedy had promised his kids on that Sunday before the California primary that he was going to take them to Disneyland. And so when somebody yelled, "Here he comes," I took a look, and I got my camera out. And that's a picture of Robert Kennedy at Disneyland. And this was taken about 48 hours before his victory speech at the Ambassador Hotel.
My thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there.
So, those are the historical concepts, all right? Those are the historical things. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our memorial. I mentioned this last time. The war in Vietnam was very divisive. By the time I got back in the fall of '69, a lot of anti-war protest. We had a lot of issues that were happening to Vietnam vets. Our GI Bill didn't even come close to that of World War II. We withdrew from Vietnam in '73, and America just wanted to move on. They just wanted to move on, which is natural. But for many veterans, they couldn't move on. And one of the things that you look back at all the Hollywood movies that come out, The Deer Hunter, Hamburger Hill, Coming Home, The Boys of Company C, Apocalypse Now. All of those, to me, are incredible, dramatic movies, but most Vietnam vets that came back were not misfits. We went on and lived productive lives and became professionals or became very good at whatever profession we chose. So there's a stereotype about Vietnam vets that Hollywood portrayed. But starting in the late 70s and into the early 80s, there was a recognition in the Veterans Administration that veterans that came back from Vietnam suffering from post-traumatic stress, alcohol abuse, suicidal thoughts, there was a need now that we need to honor those words of Abraham Lincoln, to care for those who shall have borne the battle. And so there was a great movement that was going on, led by Max Cleland, who was a triple amputee, the first Vietnam vet in charge of the VA, Senator John McCain, POW. And so things started to come in place. But then we had the memorial. And it was decided to put a memorial. And it was decided that in this memorial, that it would be black marble. That was controversial. But the reason was, it was because it was reflective. And you can see on this picture, you look at the name, you see yourself, and you reflect about the comrade or the loved one that did not make it home. The second is that it's just names. There's no political statements. There's no statutes. There's some statutes now of 3 soldiers. There's statutes of Army nurses. But there's no political statements. There's no war statements. And it was decided that the names would be placed not in alphabetical order. I read it's like 800 Smiths who were killed in action, 400 Lopez's. It was decided to put it in chronological order. And the purpose was they died together and they're going to be forever on the wall together. So that's our memorial. And all of those young men that I showed you the picture of, they're on panel 47 of the east wall. It's a photograph taken of that. And then for the Seabees, all of them who died, the 6 of them, I've highlighted, they're within 4 to 5 lines of one another. So, I get back, I do college, law school. As I indicated before, I very seldom talked about my military service, which was common. In 2012, I was diagnosed with one of the Agent Orange cancers. I want to tell you right now, it looks like I'm going to die with it, not because of it, okay? But it was traumatic for me. I went through this period that I'm sure many cancer survivors go through, your pity, your anger. But then I realized that I had 50 years of a life that those young men didn't have. So I went on a journey. I went on a mission to thank them. To thank them for the sacrifice of their loved one. And how I found the relatives was, again, through the internet. It was obituaries of their parents, and it would say, lost a son, in 19, and then I knew it. I had it. And then in the internet, you can find anybody's address, including mine, okay? So I wrote everybody a letter, and I left it open to them, that I was with your brother, your sister, your father, your cousin, and I was one of the litter bearers. I'd like to make contact with you if it's acceptable to you. I have some documents to share with you, and please feel free to contact me. Every one of them did. Every one of them contacted me. And I went then on a journey to various parts of the country. I went on a journey to the South, the Midwest, and I met with them. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the helicopter. The helicopter was an important piece of machinery, for lack of a better word, in Vietnam. It did the movement of the troops, but as important, it retrieved the wounded and the killed in action within minutes of a firefight. And the bodies, the remains of those that were killed in action, they were on an airplane within 6, 7, 8 hours after the firefight. And can you imagine having this job? The casualty notification officer that goes to the door to give this horrible news. Unlike World War II, where it was mostly these land battles that everybody knew about, Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima. The firefight in Vietnam or a rocket attack was over in 30 seconds to a minute. And so the casualty notification officer had very, if any, details. So when I met with the family, they didn't know of how their loved one died as heroes as I saw them. And so what happened, my mission was to thank them, and it turned out they were thanking me. And I indicated, I'm going back, and they all wanted to come with me. And so we left. We departed from different airports. On March 27th, we arrived in Da Nang. In March 29th, I had a tour guide. We had a Mercedes van, and we traveled on the road that we widened. And what I couldn't get over, unlike when I was there, was how beautiful the country was. And I took these photos. And this was my guide. His name was Tong. His father was in the Viet Cong in the area and at the time I was. And we became very close. He was helping me at various locations and that. Now, this is my good friend Herbie Schilling that I told you about, okay? These were our accommodations in the mud, in the jungle. And then when we went back, out there just down from where that tent was a 5-star resort. And that was my hooch in 2018. Okay? It was very nice. And then that night, we're all having dinner, and we noticed a full moon. And this becomes important in this last video that I'm going to show you. And it was just beautiful. And the next morning, we got up, and the first place we went was where the Marines fought so gallantly to maintain that bridge. And there was the actual bunker was still there. And then we went to the site where the 6 Seabees had gave their lives. And what was just so amazing to me is how the jungle overtook the quarry. This is the picture of March 31st. This is after 2 months we were there. Take a look at our camp. And when we got back, or when I was there, the quarry was gone. The jungle had totally overtaken it. But I had my iPhone, and I had the cloud, and I had the schematic that was drawn to scale, and I knew where the railroad tracks were, and they were still there. And so I went through in the jungle to try to approximate where those young men gave their ultimate sacrifice. And so I also had this photograph, which was taken of our memorial. And I noticed that there was a marking of a sort of an island out there in the bay. And so by using that as a reference point, having the schematic, I was able to walk off how far where the place was where they died from the railroad tracks, and I approximated it. And I want to show you the two markers there. And there we were. And so we were all there. And I want to tell you, I don't want to say it was tough for me, but here I've been a prosecutor for 20 years. I've been a judge at that time for 19 years. Some people say I talk too much, but I was very apprehensive about talking there. It was challenging. Like, what do you say? So I called upon an individual whose brother was one of the ones who were in that pit. And he's a very spiritual person. When I met him, was on the journey to meet the people, and one of the first things he asked me, he said, do you have nightmares? Have you? I go, no, and I've said this before, I've had to get a snore guard because of my wife. I haven't. Now, I say that because I'm nothing superior. I'm not physically strong, but for whatever reason, I have not had those. And he took my hand, and he touched my hand, and he said, that's their protection of you for what you had to do. And is the best explanation that I can come up with, okay? And so he spoke. And when he spoke, we did a memorial. We had some Twinkies. We got a pack of cigarettes. And we spoke. And when you listen to this, and it's not going to be very long, and I'm looking at the clock, and the clock still hasn't moved in the back, all right? But when you hear this, you're going to hear trucks, you're going to hear birds, and you're going to hear like, wow, this is like life. And it's just hard to imagine that 50 years earlier, there was this battle. So if you can just take a moment, and we're almost done.
That was just incredible. Well, last night we're having dinner, and we got done, and we're on a peninsula, if you will. And I usually go right to my house, and this time I went left because when I felt like it, with my bicycle to the end of the road, and gave me a view of this mountain with full moon, which is pretty unique. And I just realized, this is incredible. I can see this from here. And then I realized it was Good Friday. And I realized that my mother's sacrifice of her son saved one person, my father. God's sacrifice of his son saves all of us who choose to believe in him. I just thought, seeing this right now at night, it's been probably an hour and a half there, just take me all in. And I could have gone home that night and been all worth it to do that. That was just, it brought me closer to my God, to Mark, to the whole experience. And I'll just close by reading, stating a verse. It's John 15:13. I like to practice John. It says, no greater love has one than this, that one lays down his life for one's friends. So we had 5 men that showed the greatest love they can show.
So, Laguna Niguel, guess what? One of the people that I tracked down turned out to be a resident of Laguna Niguel. And it's that gentleman there, and I've invited him here, and I wanted him to hear my presentation in live person about how his brother died as a hero. So John, if you could stand. Well, I don't know how long over I went, but I have my defense, all right? And I want to thank you again for giving me the gift of your time. Veterans Day is very, very important. And I'm just very proud of this city to recognize it and to honor veterans and to understand that, you know, when you go in the service and you're 20 years old and you're about ready to go into combat, the most difficult decision you've ever had to make in your life before that was who you were going to ask to your senior prom. And here you are in a combat zone, and it has to affect you. And so those words of Abraham Lincoln, to care for those who shall have borne the battle, that spirit's alive and well here. And again, thank you very much for your time.
Wow, okay. So let's have another round of applause for Judge Richard King, please. I'm so thankful, and we are so fortunate that you have afforded us the opportunity to share in part 2 of your story. I'm Councilmember Stephanie Winstead, and here in Laguna Niguel, we join together today as a community to proudly honor our veterans and to give them the thanks and recognition that you deserve. Because it's so important to teach our younger generations about the history and significance of Veterans Day so that its traditions are carried on long into the future, we intentionally involve our city scouts who create personalized thank you cards. Each veteran who signed in today will receive a handmade thank you card, which will be distributed by members of Girl Scout Troop 2476. To all of our veterans in attendance, when your name is called, please stand to be recognized if you are able to. I'd like to start with J. Michael Farr, who served for 31 years in the U.S. Army. Mr. Farr. Thank you for your service. John Pointer, thank you for serving us for 30 years in the U.S. Army. Jorge Alberto Swank, 25 years in the U.S. Army. Shep Bentley, 25 years in the U.S. Marine Corps. Tim Bowman, 22 years in our Army. Gregory Baxter, who served for 21 years in the U.S. Marine Corps. Carl David, who served for 20 years in the U.S. Army. Dave Tuma, who served from 1982 to 1986 in the U.S. Air Force. John Ulrich, who served from 1966 to 1970 in the U.S. Air Force. Michael Garnreiter, who served from 1972 to 1973 in the U.S. Marine Corps. William Harris, who served from 1965 to 1969 in the U.S. Marine Corps. Jim Van Schack, who served from 1946 to 1948 in the U.S. Army. Jesus Vasquez, who served from 1964 to 1968 in the U.S. Air Force. Manfred Mine, who served from 1964 to 1970 in the U.S. Air Force. William F. Coate, who served from 1962 to 1966 in the U.S. Navy. Terry Foster, who served from 1964 to 1970 in the U.S. Navy. John Scott Williams, who served from 1966 to 1969 in the U.S. Army. Hugh Winter, who served from 1967 to 1968 in the U.S. Navy Reserve. Gary Benke, who served in 1964 in the U.S. Army. John Sheets, who served from 1967 to 1969 in the U.S. Air Force Medical Corps. Ron Jensen, who served from 1963 to 1969 in the U.S. Army. Frank McGrath, who served from 1970 to 1976 in the U.S. Navy. Thomas Baxter, who served from 1966 to 1968 in the U.S. Marine Corps. Chris Skura, who served from 2000 to 2004 in the U.S. Air Force. John Wilson, who served from 1973 to 1979 in the U.S. Air Force. James Fay, who served from 1961 to 1965 in the U.S. Navy. Mark Weiner, who served from 1961 to 1963 in the U.S. Army. Larry Majhus, who served from 1969 to 1971 in the U.S. Army. Marco Perez, who served from 1963 to 1965 in the U.S. Army. And in memory of those who could not be with us and have passed on, I'd like to honor Gerald McCloskey, who served from 1951 to 1961 in the U.S. Navy. Joe Hutchison, who served in 1959 in the U.S. Army. Keith Purrington, who served in the U.S. Army. And because I have the mic, so I can, I am also going to take this moment to honor my grandfather, George William Sedgwick, who served in the Korean War in the U.S. Army, George William Sedgwick III, who served in the U.S. Air Force during Vietnam, my uncle, Robert Sedgwick, who served in the U.S. National Guard during Vietnam, and my cousin, Matthew Sedgwick, who served in the U.S. Navy. We're sharing our love of God and country with our children. To every veteran in attendance today, and to every service member here in our community, throughout the state, across the country, and around the globe. We sincerely thank you for your service, your dedication, and your sacrifice. We are forever indebted to you. And we thank every family that has sacrificed for their loved ones to serve. We promise to continue to honor you through our programs and services here in the great city of Laguna Niguel. May God bless you all. As we conclude today's program, I would like to thank all those who have graciously contributed to making this Veterans Day ceremony possible. Veteran Second Class Petty Officer, U.S. Navy, Richard M. King. Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, and Girl Scout troops. Mayor Ray Genoway. My Laguna Niguel City Council colleagues, Jean Johns, Kelly Jennings, and Stephanie Otto. City Manager Tammy Letourneau. Assistant City Manager Justin Martin. The Laguna Niguel Military Support Committee. Laguna Niguel Parks and Recreation Department, led by Jonathan Harmon. The Laguna Niguel Women's Club. American Legion Post 281. American Legion Auxiliary Unit 281. And the Freedom Committee for Orange County. Thank you all for joining us here today to honor, celebrate, and remember our veterans. Please join us in the courtyard area to enjoy refreshments and conversation. James Kelly Band will be wrapping up with a song. Thank you.
What a wonderful day. What a wonderful day. Thank you one more time, Mr. King, for sharing your story with us. I get the honor of running into him at Starbucks and letting him get him once in a while. We get to rap once in a while. But anyway, my dad was a Vietnam vet. He's actually a Navy SEAL in Vietnam. So, and I was born on Pearl Harbor Day. My daughter was born on D-Day. So I think God put me in a position to give back to veterans the little bit that I can give. So thank you, veterans, and it's an honor to be here with you guys today in Laguna Niguel. I love this city. You guys are wonderful. You do a lot for the community and for veterans, and we all appreciate it. If tomorrow all the things were gone that I worked for all my life, and I had to start again, just my children and my wife, I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, because the flag still stands for freedom, and it can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still. lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, sea to shining sea, Detroit down to Houston, New York to LA. There's pride in every American heart. It's time to stand and say, let me hear you folks. I'm proud to be an American, when at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, well, at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. God bless y'all.